At number 10 we have Cersei. A member of the Eternals, Cersei has been perfecting her craft for tens of thousands of years and has spent a decent amount of time as an Avenger. First introduced in the Eternals number 3, she ends up officially joining the Avengers in Avengers number 314. Some say she joins out of interest in protecting the world and its inhabitants from harm, but others say it's because she's in love with Captain America. Regardless, without even considering her strength yet, her invulnerability is impressive enough. It's understood that the only way to kill Cersei is by reducing her to atoms and scattering them throughout the cosmos. And on top of this is her impressive ability known as transmutation, which allows her to change the molecular structure of her targets, which is a pretty fun power. Anywhere from turning enemies into jelly to disintegrating air itself to creating sentient life out of nothing, Cersei just had to appear on this list. At number 9 is Vision. Now, if you're more familiar with the MCU than the comics, you may know Vision as more of a tragic character, but Vision is anything but that in the comics, from his power levels to his unique origin story. In Avengers number 57, Vision is still created by Ultron, but his body is formed using Horton cells to replace human anatomy, and his consciousness is made to replicate that of Wonder Man and a little bit of Alex Lipton. Then once he sets off to tear apart the Avengers, he disobeys his orders and instead joins them, becoming one of the leading members as a result. And it's quite the acquisition for the Avengers because Vision is widely considered one of the most powerful of all time. For example, that one time when he increases his density and turns himself into a meteorite to take out Nefaria in Avengers number 166, or how he proves his worthiness of Mjolnir in the MCU, which is a huge moment for any hero, especially in AI. He's also got his extremely powerful energy blasts, his incorporeal form that he can use on command, and immortality. If he isn't ever destroyed, he will basically survive as long as his parts get repaired every once in a while. And plus, he's just a very pragmatic hero, capable of using heightened intelligence to keep emotions out of every decision he makes. At number 8 we have Wonder Man. Where do we begin with this guy? Well, firstly, for those of you who don't know, Wonder Man is another case where he initially fights against the Avengers before coming around to joining them. Wonder Man is essentially immortal, having been resurrected from temporary deaths multiple times and getting stronger each time, might I add. He is an ionic powered being who doesn't age and doesn't need oxygen, food, or water to survive, but that's just speaking to his invulnerability. He's also a shapeshifter with adept teleportation and martial arts abilities. He's known to be in the 100-ton strength class, putting him up there in power levels with the Sentry, the Hulk, and Thor. Oh yeah, and he can't be infected by a symbiote, which is great news for the Avengers, who would basically be done for if that happened. Some of his more impressive feats include knocking out Hercules, Namor, and Abomination, as well as holding off the Thing, and of course taking down Ultron with his bare hands. The only thing holding Wonder Man back is his inflated ego and insecurities about his powers, as well as his somewhat vague sense of right and wrong at times, but that's not much of a downside considering how powerful this Avenger is.
And at number 7, Venom Thor from Earth 1089. This alternative Thor comes from What If Volume 2 Issue 4, in a story called What If the Alien Costume Had Possessed Spider-Man. The alien costume it's referring to is Venom prior to the character coming into his full-fledged Eddie Brock hosted glory. In this hypothetical tale, Peter Parker doesn't seek out the help of Reed Richards like he does on the 616 Earth. Instead, the Venom symbiote stays bonded to Parker until he begins to sniff out some stronger potential hosts, having used up all of Parker's adrenaline in the process. Now initially, the Venom symbiote jumps to the Hulk, but when he sets eyes on Thor, he ditches Hulk and heads over to the Asgardian god. Thor's tenure as Venom is brief, with Reed Richards employing the help of Black Bolt to use his sonic scream to separate Thor from Venom before the two are permanently bonded. But in the process, Black Bolt does destroy Mount Rushmore. But hey, at least Thor ends up getting free of the symbiote. That's at least good, right? I mean, it's only Mount Rushmore. In at number 6, the Ultimate Black Widow. This version of Black Widow is notably worse than the one we mentioned previously. I mean, she is, higher up on the list, so kind of a given. The Ultimate 1610 universe in general gives us a grim take on beloved Marvel characters, exploring different aspects of their character personality traits that were never ventured into in the 616 universe. This Black Widow is a prime example of that. Her origin story is similar to her 616 beginnings, but the reason she's called Black Widow is thanks to a reputation she's cultivated by killing her husbands, marrying frequently, and then assassinating them. Or rather, they would end up suffering from unfortunate accidents. She eventually defected from the KGB to the US and joined S.H.I.E.L.D. She would later marry Tony Stark, who gave her an all-black suit of Iron Man armor and a set of nanites that bonded to her skin in order to control the suit, all as an engagement present. But now here's where it gets awkward for Tony. Turns out Natasha is a traitor and reveals the identity of the Hulk, frames Captain America and Thor, and then aids the Liberators with their invasion of the US, all as a way to seek revenge for Russia, believing that the US made her country into a bankrupt nation of hookers and gangsters. She then kills Jarvis, holds Tony hostage in an attempt to extort him of his fortune, but then Tony uses the nanites in her body to freeze her in place, knocks her unconscious with a wine bottle, giving her brain damage. And then, when she's hospitalized, Hawkeye comes after her, shooting her in the head with one of his arrows, all because she was partially responsible for his family's death. Talk about dark.
At number 5 we have Jack of Hearts. This guy is notoriously one of the worst Avengers because his most notable act as part of the team is murdering another one of the members. Although he does this while under the influence of Scarlet Witch, there's no hiding from something so brutal. I mean, the Avenger he kills is Ant-Man, who's a really important member of the team. Aside from this though, Jack of Hearts also just spends such a short time with the Avengers that even his heroic deeds are sort of weak, regardless of the tragedy. Being the 52nd member of the Avengers, he's brought on specifically to help take on Kang the Conqueror. They all team up with the Justice League and a huge battle goes down. And then promptly after this, Jack tragically decides he needs to end his own life for various reasons, taking a villain with him who had killed Ant-Man's daughter. But it's pretty ironic that the next time he makes an appearance, he blows himself up and takes Ant-Man with him. Just a messy run as an Avenger through and through. At number 4 we have Stingray. This guy isn't ever really a true member of the Avengers. He is officially, but he only seems to jump on as part of the group when they need him, like when they need access to his underwater hydro base or when an inverted Doctor Doom brings him on to rescue civilians from a river. He's sort of their fringe friend that they use for water related issues. Could this be a case of lazy writing? Perhaps. But it seems more like he's not really a strong enough character to do much more than pop in and out of the scene when water gets involved. He also almost fights Iron Man due to a misunderstanding right when he joins the team and even campaigns to have him removed from the Avengers, which is just an awful way to start. At number 3 is Star Fox. This guy is just a bad hero. He's not even really a hero. His powers are extremely problematic in that he can basically gain the love of a woman on command. But it's not really love because it's artificial and it only lasts for so long. So when he uses his powers, these women often wake up not knowing where they are or what they've done, which is naturally a pretty deplorable thing to inflict on a person with your powers. And he doesn't even seem to feel badly after it either. He just gets his clothes on and jumps out the window like, "See you later, good luck piecing together the last 12 hours. Otherwise known as Eros of Titan, this guy is actually Thanos' older brother, so this sort of explains the evil nature of his powers. At least in the comics they're kind of aware of his nasty nature, because the woman who he's used his powers on eventually come out and sue him because of what he does, which has to be a first for a superhero. I'm honestly just surprised that this dude even had a membership to the Avengers in the first place. He just kind of sucks. At number 2 is D-Man, or Demolition Man. This dude should never really have been brought on to join the Avengers. He's sort of just this unmotivated, scraggly guy with a horribly designed suit. He just steals Wolverine's and Daredevil's costumes and makes a tragic mashup of the two. His origins are that he's basically a wrestler that was given superhuman strength before befriending Captain America. When Cap needs to reform the Avengers, he thinks it's a good idea to bring on D-Man to join the team. But this choice is pretty obviously out of sympathy for the guy because he doesn't really do much when he does join. He's then sort of left behind and lost in time, becoming more and more unmotivated as the years go on, eventually living in homelessness before becoming a sort of villain. Not the best track record for even an alum of the Avengers. But I can't totally rag on him. The Avengers have insanely high standards and some people just want to hang out and eat sub sandwiches. So that's D-Man. The number 1 spot on this list goes to Dr. Druid. Having been trained under the same mentor who trained Doctor Strange, you'd think this guy would have gone on to be a great member of the Avengers. Well, at first he wasn't actually known as such a bad hero by his own right, but after joining the team, it becomes pretty obvious that he wasn't destined for greatness. His attitude is arrogant, he carries a lot of insecurity about living in Strange's shadow for so long, and he also has a big weakness to the charm of women, proving him to have a pretty low emotional intelligence. And this is a pretty major fault when you're supposed to be an Avenger, because you need to be able to have a strong character regardless of whatever your power set is. This also tends to lead him to be a subordinate to women in positions of power like Captain Marvel, who he continually undermines until his disloyalty leads to her being seriously injured in battle. He then tries to convince everyone to name him the successor as the new chairman. This guy, Dr. Druid, was just kind of a weak-minded fool who was conniving and subordinate through and through. It's surprising he was ever brought on board with the Avengers because he really proves himself to be one of their weakest links while he's there.
In at number 10, Marvel 1602's Black Widow. Out of all of our scary alternates on this list, this version of Black Widow is perhaps the most tame. But why is she terrifying? It's because she uses her skills and abilities for some straight up evil stuff. This Natasha is from Earth 311 from Marvel 1602, a world in which she's a freelance spy and is considered the most dangerous woman in all of Europe. From Neil Gaiman and Andy Kubert, the Marvel 1602 series is an alternate reality in which we see our favorite Marvel characters operating during the year 1602 in Europe. The world is very much like it is on Earth 616 in that time period as well. Now, Natasha had previously worked alongside Matthew Murdock, but then betrayed him for Count Otto von Doom. Otto Octavius and Victor von Doom smoked together. She ended up becoming the villain's lover. She worked with him during the kidnapping of William Shakespeare, serving as the captain of his flying ship, up until she started questioning his authority and his plans, which resulted in him pushing her over the side of the ship to her death. What a way to go. Up next, number 9, Age of X Steve Rogers from Earth 11326. Here we have a version of Steve Rogers who's all for the killing and hunting of mutants, or at least he was in the beginning. As the leader of the Avengers, it was his job to hunt mutants down. During one mission in particular, he ends up giving into his bloodlust and kills Mystique, justifying her death as the right thing to do, because she was dangerous. That's when he discovers that she was actually protecting a group of mutant children. Steel Corpse, who is the alternative Tony Stark on that Earth, suffers from an emergency override with his armor and attempts to kill the children anyway, triggering the man inside the suit to inform Rogers to not save him but to save the kids instead. Steve ends up shooting him in the back of his head. This Steve is then killed while battling the Hulk, with Legacy then absorbing his memories as a way of saying thank you for changing his ways and attempting to help mutants in the end. He turns out for the better, but I guess, bloodlust is still pretty scary, right? Moving on to number 8, Hawkeye of Earth 11223. This version of Hawkeye is a product of the What If Dark Reign title from issue 1, volume 1. In this story, set on Earth 11223, Clint is a member of the Avengers, as per usual. The team goes after the X-Men, believing they are involved in the deaths of Tony Stark and Beast. That's when Hawkeye pretty much gets his butt handed to him by Sabretooth. Ultimately, his life is spared by the mutants, but it only gets more tragic for the sharpshooter from there on out. He heads back to the Avengers mansion, only to witness it getting completely destroyed, with all of the remaining Avengers being killed in the process. So Hawkeye takes matters into his own hands and seeks out the culprit, Norman Osborn, believing that he doesn't deserve to live, and that killing him is the only way to end his reign of terror. Dark Hawkeye.
At number 7, we have the World Breaker himself, the Incredible Hulk. Need I expound on this one? The Hulk has always been known as one of the Avengers' most valuable assets, and even with his weakness being that he lacks control over his actions, his power level alone outbalances that shortcoming by a long shot. Besides, part of what makes the Hulk so important to the team is that he's unhinged. If he actually had a conscience, it would be argued that he wouldn't exude quite as much strength at times, considering a lot of it is confused rage induced. In Marvel Comics Presents number 52, he destroys an asteroid twice the size of Earth, he tears the fabric of reality in The Incredible Hulk number 126, and during Secret Wars he holds up a mountain range on his own to protect his fellow Avengers. And as often as he causes problems for Earth, he has also protected it benefit from cataclysmic events many times, like the time when he prevents an earthquake with his own hands. This hero is probably the strongest on the list in terms of brute fighting strength, and if we'd made this list about 20 years ago, he'd probably be in the top 3. But these days there are just more to come that simply deliver just a little bit more than sheer brute strength. Like Hyperion, who's in our number 6 spot. Known by some as the Superman of Marvel, Hyperion has a ridiculously impressive power set and a very complex motivation for heroism. Although there are plenty of different iterations of this hero, the one most commonly known to be an Avenger originates from a recently destroyed universe. And what's more is that he has to relive this experience in his mind repeatedly due to his non-linear light-based memory. This is important to note on a list about power because it really explains why this hero puts so much into his work as a superhero, to create happier memories for him to experience in perpetuity. But an even better gauge for his powers are his feats as a hero, such as the time when he lifts Atlantis, yes the city, and destroys it single-handedly before beheading Namor in 2016 Squadron Supreme number 1. He's also got extreme speed while flying, traveling from Nevada to Sumatran and back in less than a minute. That's speed that could contend with some speedsters, and Hyperion does it while flying.
Moving on to number 5, Iron Hammer. Recently, Marvel released a story arc known as Infinity Warps. It was a story in which Gamora had possession of the Infinity Stones and folded the Marvel Universe in half inside of the Soul Gem, which combined different characters' personas into one, leading to a bunch of mashups of Marvel characters. This one is the combination of Thor and Tony Stark's Iron Man, called Stark Odin's son, in which Tony was the son of the chieftain executive of Asgard. Due to his arrogance and vanity, Stark was stripped of his godhood until he learned the pain and loss of being human. Stark would awake on Earth with no memory of his past, but then use his genius-level intellect to build up a tech industrial company, creating himself a suit of armor when he was captured and kept prisoner by dark elves. See what they did there? They're just taking all the things and mashing it together. And at 4, Thor-El from Earth 9602. Back in the 90s, DC Comics came together with Marvel to create the Amalgam Universe, a universe in which the characters of DC and Marvel universes were amalgamated. In it, we were introduced to the combination of Thor and DC's Man of Steel, Superman, creating Thor-El. While he didn't get a whole lot of panel time and the character's true extent of his powers were never fully explored, he was considered to be the Kryptonian Thunder God, wielding an energy mallet along with having the combined powers of Thor and Superman, or rather, the blue energy of Superman. His one weakness is Noronite, similar to Kryptonite. Moving on to number 3, Weapon Hex. Weapon Hex is the Infinity Warp version of X-23 Laura Kinney and Wanda Maximoff's Scarlet Witch. And just like the other Infinity Warp's amalgamations, Weapon Hex has all the same powers as Laura and Wanda combined, meaning she's got magical reality warping abilities, meets the claws and healing factors and adamantium skeleton of X-23. Her history is similar to X-23's, having been an experiment that was raised by scientist Sarah Kinney, except this time, rather than it be a part of the Weapon X program, Sarah was part of an occult scientific sect known as the Evolutionaries. She would later become a member of the Defenders alongside other warped heroes. Speaking of, in at number 2, Soldier Supreme. The last of the Infinity Warps combos on our list. Here we have the amalgamation of Sorcerer Supreme Dr. Stephen Strange and America's most patriotic hero, Steve Rogers. Soldier Supreme's story begins during World War II, with the Super Soldier Serum being a cover for mystical rituals which give Stephen Rogers his strength and physicality, all while giving him the magical abilities of Strange and access to powerful sorcery. He would go on to fight Dormammu Red, the combination of Dormammu and Red Skull, only to be banished to the Dark Dimension for years. Rogers would live there before finding a way out when a satanic cult opened up a portal to their world. Is that worse than being frozen alive? I think it might actually be. Fighting demons all the time? And finally, in at 1, Zombie Hulk. While Zombie Hulk might not be the first alternate to come to mind when you think of the strongest alternates in the multiverse, he's a character who managed to get himself the power cosmic, all thanks to mowing down on the Silver Surfer. So let's backtrack here for a second. Zombie Hulk, aka Bruce Banner of Earth 2149, was infected by the zombie plague after Nick Fury requested his help in trying to resist against it. That clearly did not work out too well, and after he became a zombie, he went around chewing down on a bunch of different characters on Earth 2149. Alongside Wolverine, Iron Man, Power Man, Spider-Man, and Giant Man, he ate Silver Surfer and later Galactus, making him into one of the zombie Galacti. This means he has the power to absorb and tap into ambient cosmic energy. While we never see him use the full extent of his abilities granted thanks to the power cosmic, he does end up smashing Thanos' head in with his bare hands. Something he does because the Mad Titan calls him out for eating more than his share.
At number 10, we have Sandman. Although his redemption arc is really great and has so much potential, it sort of falls flat. Basically, the Thing one day sits Sandman down and tries to turn him to the good side, And it works. With Sandman now finding his stride as a hero, he first joins the Outlaws, a team of reformed Spider-Man enemies, and is then given a membership to the Avengers. It's all going in the right direction for the former villain until he's promptly hypnotized by Wizard and turned back to the dark side. Honestly, this isn't even Sandman's fault, but his quick turn back to evil gets in the way of him being anything close to a functional member of the Avengers. I almost didn't even put him on the list just because he barely even does anything for the team after he's inducted. And even tragically after that, he even goes off to reform the Sinister Six right after leaving the Avengers Reserve, which basically erases any good he may have done during his time as an Avenger. At number 9, we have Justice, FKA Marvel Boy. Although he's known as a pretty well-respected hero, at least in his later years, Justice still doesn't do much for the Avengers during his time with them. When he first joins, he comes off as more of a fan than anything else, making some rookie mistakes right off the bat. He also finds a way to break his leg, which isn't very common for a superhero. Much of his lack of maturity in the group is due to his worship for the other members of the Avengers, so it's hard to blame him, although he does do some pretty good work in planning to take down Ultron. Later, he ends up teaching for the Avengers Academy alongside Hank Pym, Tigra, Quicksilver, and Speedball, but overall, this character's time with the Avengers is wrought with scattered accomplishments and distracting love triangle storylines that just make him a much less effective member of the team. At number 8 is Sentry, who joins the Mighty Avengers after having one foot in the door of the New Avengers for a while. This guy is a poor addition to the team simply based on issues of power imbalance and, unfortunately, his own mental health. On the power side of things, he's so powerful that he sort of drowns out the efforts of the Avengers as a team, which in many ways is a good problem to have. But on top of this, due to his mental health issues, he tends to have trouble reining in his power set and often second guesses himself. I feel badly for the Sentry, and I only put him on this list because sometimes people just aren't right for a big team. When it becomes clear that Sentry is fighting some internal battles, he is still known as the most powerful member of the team, but just needs to figure himself out first. For example, at one point, Sentry attacks Ultron at a moment when the team needed him to hold back, and sort of ruins the whole plan. Although the attack was in retaliation for Ultron seemingly killing his wife, so it's not that unexpected. It's just one of the many times that Sentry has troubles keeping his composure and taking on the responsibilities of an Avenger. He's not a bad hero, just maybe not right for the best superhero alliance ever created.
Up next at number 7, Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider is the Peter Parker of Earth 11638, an Earth where Uncle Ben never died and actually aided Peter with his superpowers. And Peter created a company called Parker Technologies, which made him super rich. Operating under the mantle of Amazing Spider, he ended up dying, and Bruce Banner, the Sorcerer Supreme from our last number, because this takes place on the same Earth, would strike a deal with him after Banner had gone to hell with his angrier half. Parker was freed, infused with the spirits and powers of the repentant damned, turning him into an amalgamation of Ghost Rider and Spider-Man, known as Ghost Spider. His abilities were a combination of both the Web Slingers and Jonathan Blazes from Earth 616. And at number 6, the Dark Avengers. Let's talk about an alternate version of the Avengers, as in the whole team, that appeared on Earth 616 since 2009. The Dark Avengers. The first iteration of the Dark Avengers was assembled by Norman Osborn, who at that point was an anti-hero of sorts. The first group included Sentry, Ares, Novar, Mac Gargan's Venom, Moonstone, who portrayed Miss Marvel, Bullseye, who was portraying Hawkeye, and Daken, Wolverine's son, who operated under his father's mantle. Osborn led the team as Iron Patriot. Hawkeye, as his Ronin persona, then goes public on television declaring Osborn a threat, reminding everyone of his murderous past, in case y'all forgot, which only begins a series of unfortunate events for the team leader, who later finds himself manipulated by Loki, relapsing into his Green Goblin persona, and declaring war on the Asgardians. Talk about a relapse. A second iteration of the team post the Fear Itself story event was made up of another group of characters who portrayed Avengers members. Tommy Shishido was the Wolverine of the group, Scar, Hulk's son, fit into the role of his father, and Ragnarok took on Thor's role, to name a few. Up next at 5, Herald of Galactus Thor from Earth 717. Here we have another what if story concerning Thor, from Volume 1 of What If Thor Issue 1. This Thor appears in a story called What If Thor Was the Herald of Galactus. It's a bleak tale in which Thor, upon Galactus' arrival at Asgard, realizes that fighting against the Devourer of Worlds is futile, and ends up striking a deal with the cosmic entity instead. Leave Asgard alone and he would become Galactus' herald. He goes around informing the inhabitants of various planets that Galactus has chosen their worlds to satiate his appetite, and that their homes could not be spared. Destruction was inevitable. Eventually though, Thor ends up returning to his home on Asgard briefly, only to discover that his father Odin has been killed by Loki, and the trickster god has imprisoned all of his pals. So Thor rescues those remaining alive, sends them to Earth, and then brings Galactus to Asgard to consume it. Up next at 4, Vampire Captain America from 3931. Cap has a history of transforming into supernatural beings. Cap Wolf, anybody? This time around though, this Steve Rogers from Earth 3931 is a different horror movie being. He's a vampire. On this Earth, Steve was infected with vampirism during World War II by Baron Blood, who on this Earth is actually a vampire badass humanoid creature. After being bitten, Rogers develops new powers and ends up infecting the rest of the Avengers team, making them his personal slaves. The Exiles would encounter him when trying to fix his world, and eventually Rogers was decapitated, but that was not the end of him. He ends up surviving and reattaches his head to his body. From vampires to zombies, in at our next number we have Marvel's Zombies Hawkeye from Earth 2149. We featured the zombie versions of the Avengers on our last list, but this time we're gonna get a bit more specific and look at one Avengers member in particular who has quite the compelling and eerie arc, Clint Barton of Earth 2149. Hawkeye's past is presumably the same as the 616 Hawkeye up until the zombie plague. When the Avengers attempted to stop the Sentry who had been infected, he bites all of them, overpowering them and infecting them. During the siege on Castle Doomstadt in Latveria, zombie Hawkeye is decapitated by Magneto. He uses Steve Rogers' shield to do so. Flash forward to 40 years later. T'Challa's grandson finds a very confused and incoherent head in the rubble of New York. Hawkeye is still alive but has gone insane thanks to, well, just being a head. He's taken back to T'Challa, who realizes that Hawkeye's hunger has dissipated and ends up giving him the Wasp's glass-domed suit to use as a body. He's later killed by the Hulk, who smashes his head in, crushing it, killing him once and for all. In at number 2, Skeletal Peter Parker from Earth 9811. Shout out to Smasher for the suggestion for this number. So this version of Spider-Man comes from What If Volume 2, issue 114 from 1998, issue 114 from 1998, in a story called Brave New World. It's a different take on Secret Wars, with the participants of that story event being trapped on Battleworld, never returning to Earth. And it's 25 years after the Secret Wars event, the first one that is. They're forced to settle down, with many of the heroes and villains getting married and having kids. Now in the midst of all this, we see Spider-Man still wearing the black symbiote costume, aka Venom, something that he had removed by Reed Richards after Secret Wars. But here's the kicker, because he never got the chance to get it removed, it permanently bonded to him, with the symbiote eventually consuming Peter's body entirely, leaving only a skeleton. At one point in the story, we see the symbiote jump off of Peter's skeleton when affected by a sonic attack, revealing that Parker has been dead for a very long time, and Venom has been running the show. Peter's mind hasn't totally been possessed by the symbiote though, which perhaps makes this even creepier. And finally, in at number 1, Dark Beast from Earth 295. While Beast is largely considered to be a member of the X-Men, it's not the only team in the comics that he was ever a part of. Once upon a time, he was a member of the Avengers too. He's also been a member of the Secret Avengers and the Defenders. He gets around a lot when it comes to superhero teams fighting for justice. But you know who doesn't? His dark counterpart, who hails from Earth 295, the Age of Apocalypse timeline, in which Charles Xavier was killed off, leading to Magneto leading the Resistance, and Apocalypse attacking sooner. Apocalypse manages to conquer North America because of it. So how does Xavier's absence turn Beast into a villain? Well, without Charles around, Beast's intelligence and desire for experimentation were unhindered by morals and ethics. He wasn't compassionate like his 616 counterpart, so he ends up becoming one of Apocalypse's chief scientists, who tortures and experiments on both humans and mutants unethically, including Cyclops and Jean Grey, which is how he ends up getting the nickname Beast, since he's so damn cruel and gruesome. He ends up escaping from that reality before it's blown to smithereens, coming to Earth 616. He then pretends to be 616 Hank McCoy, killing off the childhood friends of that Beast in order to cover his tracks, and eventually joins up with Onslaught. In at number 10, Henry Pym. Henry Pym of Earth 12091 is a literal humanoid ant. Pym was a member of the Avengers Federation, an Avengers team that appears in Space Punisher issue 4, which was released back in 2012. He differs from his 616 counterpart mainly due to his physical appearance, if that wasn't obvious. The character has 3 talons on each hand, 2 talons on each foot, and an insect head with antennae and 4 insect arms. Now aside from having the same abilities as Henry Pym and this new bug body upgrade, not much else is known about this ant Ant-Man, aside from the fact that he was trying to stop the Kree-Skrull War by eliminating both sides with his fellow Avengers members. Moving on to number 9, Anti-Vision. Anti-Vision from Earth 932 is an evil version of Vision who was a member of the Gatherers, sent to infiltrate the Avengers. He possesses all of the same abilities as Vision, and ultimately meets his end when the Protector cuts him in half for betraying him, something Anti-Vision had done in an attempt to save his own butt. But what makes this version of Vision more deadly? Well, he shows more of a range of emotion than the regular 616 Vision does, especially when it comes to cruelty, with him depicting more delinquent behavior and enjoying causing others pain. Sadist much? And at number 8, the Infernal Hulk. This version of the Hulk came from Earth 11638, in which Bruce Banner was the Sorcerer Supreme of that Earth. Banner separated himself from the Hulk, banishing his monstrous half to hell. In doing so, the Hulk became the Infernal Hulk, a stronger, more demonic version of the character, who eventually broke out of hell. Banner had to come up with a plan alongside Spider-Man and Deadpool, and reversed his banishing spell on the Hulk, recombining himself and the Infernal Hulk together, with Banner's neck then being snapped in sacrifice in order to keep the Infernal Hulk from ever taking control of his body and breaking free.
At number 7 we have US Agent, or John Walker. Formerly a stand-in for Captain America, his true colors show when Steve Rogers returns and Walker is renamed US Agent, which is just a bunko name if you ask me. I had to put him on the list even though he does the honorable deed of taking over as Captain America when Steve Rogers goes AWOL and becomes Nomad. He's just a little too intense on the patriotism front and brings the team down as a result. A huge part of Steve Rogers' influence on the Avengers is his ability to shelve the burden of America's unofficial but basically official superhero and keep his intentions focused on acting in favor of others. He's able to put aside his pride and work for the team, whereas Walker does the opposite. He does work for the team, but it's a big lesson in the importance of good attitude because they have the same powers, but something about John Walker's suffocating patriotism and inherent arrogance that comes with it just proves that no one could do the job like Steve could. And once again, US Agent is just such a lame name to take on, unrelated. Especially after having gone as Captain America for a time, it's just, maybe I just feel badly for him in a way. At number 6 we have Swordsman. With the biggest accolade being that he trains Hawkeye, it's hard not to squeeze this guy onto the list. Basically, Swordsman starts off as a circus performer who is known for demonstrating his mastery with bladed weaponry. He was more of a showman than a superhero realistically, and also more of a villain than a superhero if we're being honest. After losing all his money due to his gambling addiction, he decides to steal from the carnival paymaster, and when a young Hawkeye chases him, Swordsman almost kills his own apprentice. And then, fast forwarding, the way that he's eventually admitted into the Avengers is basically through fraud. He teams up with Mandarin and sends a fake message posing as Iron Man to the Avengers to allow himself into the group. And it works. Being a double agent for Mandarin, he later lures the Avengers into a bomb with the intention of blowing them up. Although he does try to dismantle it in a moment of regret, he's still dejected from the Avengers anyway. I think they just sensed he was screwing around with them. He then basically just falls back into a life of crime while picking up a drinking habit along the way, which isn't part of the reason I put him on the list. This is kind of sad. He's a very troubled character and just had some nasty intentions and tendencies. Not the most noble of the Avengers by any means. At number 5 is Blue Marvel. A very underrated and underdiscussed hero given his power levels, Blue Marvel has a stint as an Avenger and no one really talks about it. Known to be as powerful as Thor and the Hulk, Blue Marvel has redirected enormous asteroids single-handedly, as well as sending Sentry into space with one punch. But he isn't known only for his brute strength. His matter manipulation is equally powerful and impressive, giving him the ability to transmute matter at a molecular level and harness antimatter at will. This makes him an excellent support member to the Avengers as well, giving him the ability to heal the wounds of his allies. And let's be honest, a hero adept with molecular manipulation powers doesn't often also have the strength to one-shot Ultimate Hulk or three-shot King Hyperion and contend against the Avengers after just returning from a 40-year retirement. Nor do they have Reed Richards saying that they might be 3 times smarter than Doctor Doom. But Blue Marvel does. He has all of this under his belt. There's just nobody out there quite like him. Other than maybe the guy who sits in our number 4 slot, Sentry. Although he is known to be one of the more troubled and self-sabotaging heroes in the Marvel Universe, Sentry's insane power levels and diverse power set still rank him at our number 4 slot on this list. Much like Blue Marvel, Sentry has Hulk-like strength as well as transmutation abilities, except he also deals with psionic energy as well as light manipulation. And he can also regenerate his molecules from nothing, meaning that he will always exist unless someone finds a very crafty way of combating or undoing this ability. The only caveat to all this is that Sentry has this evil alter ego called the Void, who is known to be even more powerful than he is, and is known as the being to have destroyed Asgard in the Siege storyline. And even though Sentry has struggled with mental illness causing his abilities and heroic feats to be rather inconsistent, the fact of the matter is that Sentry is one of the most powerful heroes in the universe, not just the Avengers. At number 3 we have the one and only God of Thunder, Thor. These top 3 were tough for me to rank because they're such popular and fluctuating characters in both the comics and the MCU, but it's fair to say that Thor takes a spot in the top 3 based on his insane influence on the Avengers as well as his sheer power potential. Originally known to be the only other being in the Marvel Universe to contend with the Hulk, Thor has only grown stronger over the years, with plenty of other heroes filling the gap between him and the Worldbreaker. And some of these feats that he has attained have been due to his extremely lengthy existence, having been a practicing warrior for millennia. Using his belt of strength and his hammer Mjolnir, Thor is also one of the best equipped heroes in the universe. He is powerful enough to resist the gravitational pull of a neutron star, knock out the Phoenix Force with one blow, and famously take out Mangog and Thanos in back-to-back fights. I could stand here and pretend to convince you. The real fans know that the only argument here is that maybe Thor could be placed even higher on the list. That would only knock out our number 2 spot, Scarlet Witch. And I'm not sure how I'd feel about that, because this hero is just an absolute powerhouse for the Avengers. She is the daughter of Magneto, or maybe not as of recently, but I liked it better when she was, and she possesses an extremely dangerous and powerful set of magical abilities. Known to be able to manipulate reality on a cosmic scale, Scarlet Witch's powers have grown exponentially since her introduction in the X-Men number 4 in 1964. She has famously eliminated the powers of 99% of all mutants with one whisper during the House of M storyline, which is an absolutely insane feat of power. But she's also shown that she's possibly capable of creating whole universes on command, which brings her to yet another crazy level of power. Some people might argue to put her further back on the list because of her volatility as a hero, or arguably an anti-hero, but I honestly think that her powers are just too impressive to be outweighed by her struggles to control them. In fact, I almost put her at number 1, but the top spot had to go to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange started off as a character that might not have presented as much of a powerhouse, but over time he has proven himself to be the most valuable member that the Avengers have ever had. He is capable of bending time and space on command with adept precision, and can detect threats from extreme distances in space and time before they even occur. And if you take issue with this number 1 placement, just think of the scale of the forces he's faced with within his own storylines. He has to protect the world from the likes of Dormammu, Nightmare, and Urthona, among many other godlike demons. But what really makes Doctor Strange the most powerful out of all the Avengers is that he doesn't need to contend with opposition on the plane of reality that they come to him in. He is able to view the future and decide on how he wants it to play out before changing the fabric of reality to control any outcome he's faced with. The only reason that I could imagine someone might keep him from the number 1 spot these days is that he's known to have been nerfed quite a bit in the last 20 years, but even today I'd still argue that his power set puts him in the top spot.
Number 10, Gorgon. Gorgon is on the new Dark Avengers as their Wolverine. Gorgon is a mutant with the ability to turn those he makes direct eye contact with into stone. He is also a master samurai and a member of the Hand. As is typical in most villainous superhero teams, Gorgon actually has his own agenda, as we see in New Avengers issue 19. He is working in tandem with Madame Hydra, assisting the Dark Avengers while finding time. Their plan is to claim the Dark Avengers as their own when Norman Osborn succumbs to his own madness. How do they know this is going to happen? 1, Gorgon is telepathic, and 2, they just assume it's bound to happen eventually. Honestly, they have a lot of comic book history to back them up. Gorgon ends up cast as the Dark Avengers Wolverine, which makes sense considering his own vendetta against Wolverine. The two have history where Gorgon kidnapped Wolverine, then brainwashed him, made him Hydra's puppet while turning him against his fellow X-Men. Number 9. Toxic Doxy. Toxic Doxy is Dr. June Covington. She is a genetic scientist and also criminally insane. The type of criminally insane where you murder your own father when you're 12 by running him over with a tractor. When we first meet her in the comic series Osborn issue number 1, she is in prison. How did she get there? By killing 18 people with a genetic mod that made their heads explode during a prayer meeting for special needs children at Christmas time. Yeah. She happens to be in the same prison as Norman Osborn, where he's placed after the siege of Asgard results in his capture and the temporary end of the Dark Avengers. Osborn helps her and a bunch of inmates escape, only to turn himself back in so that she can become his doctor in prison, and using her mad science, possibly help him to transform into a super adaptoid. Later, her knowledge of genetics helps Toxic Doxy become the new Dark Avengers Scarlet Witch. Number 8. Mac Gargan, who is Scorpion as Venom. As Spider-Man? Norman Osborn recruits his old friend Mac Gargan, aka Scorpion, who is currently the host of Venom, to join the Dark Avengers as his Spider-Man. Of course, Venom is thrilled at the opportunity. The only issue when being recruited is that Venom is kinda huge and out of control and not super marketable for Osborn's new team. So Osborn gives him a canister which Venom eats that transforms him into a more under control Venom. Granted, he still turns pretty monstrous when fighting enemies, as is to be expected. This is Mac Gargan as Venom after all. Number 7. Moonstone. Standing in as Miss Marvel, Moonstone is one of the first Dark Avengers to be recruited by Norman Osborn. Moonstone is an old villain when it comes to the comics. Also known as Carlos Sofin, she's a psychologist and hypnotist whom we were introduced to in the comic world while she was working alongside the villainous Dr. Faustus. She later manages to get her hands on a Kree Moonstone, which she then absorbs. The stone gives her superhuman powers and she adopts the name Moonstone. In the comics, Moonstone is basically a villain to anyone who gets in her way. She mostly looks out for her own selfish interests. Moonstone as Miss Marvel ends up having to face Carol Danvers, the non-Dark Avenger, after Danvers is resurrected in the 2009 Miss Marvel series issue number 42. These two have a bit of a history in the comics of duking it out, and it is no less interesting to see this time around. Though Moonstone is about to lose to Danvers before Sentry steps in to save her, both Miss Marvels are very well matched. Moonstone's abilities are comparable to Danvers. They both share superhuman strength, durability, agility, flight, and the ability to produce photonic blasts. Although usually perceived as a villain, Moonstone does seem to become invested occasionally when taking on more heroic role, which also makes her an interesting addition to the Dark Avengers. Number 6. Ragnarok as Thor. Really, Ragnarok is Thor. Sort of. He's Thor's clone. Norman Osborn is able to recruit Ragnarok with some help from his friends at Hydra. After his escape from prison, when he is rebuilding the Dark Avengers in the new Avengers comic series. Ragnarok was created by Reed Richards and Tony Stark, and was supposed to have been destroyed. However, Hydra somehow managed to get hold of Ragnarok and give him, as a new gift, to the new Avengers and Osborn. When Osborn asks why Hydra has not made use of Ragnarok themselves, Madam Hydra answers that the clone is not in great shape and they did not have the funding to fix and awaken him. However, with Hammer's finances, Ragnarok can finally be put to good use. As we all know from the MCU Thor movie of the same name, Ragnarok, meaning destruction, should give you a pretty good idea of what you can expect when it comes to fighting Thor's clone.
Number 5. Stinger, aka Cassie Lang. This one I think we actually might see in the MCU sooner than we think, so yes. The daughter of Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, is one of my favorite parts of the Ant-Man films. She's so cute, she's funny, the way they interact, it's just good. It's a nice father-daughter relationship that we kind of saw with Morgan and Tony, but it was just nicer, and this lasted much longer. So in the comics, she actually took over for her father after his death and Avengers disassembled. Now, I don't think Paul Rudd's gonna leave the MCU anytime soon, but if/when he does, I think they've shown enough growth of Cassie Lang, literally, that they can have her suit up now. I mean, who knows, maybe after he supposedly blipped, Cassie wanted to like avenge him and stuff. We didn't really see a lot of that side. Even in the comics, she was asked by Scarlet Witch to join the Young Avengers. Then she donned the name Stinger after she died and came back to life. Now, while I don't think this exactly is gonna happen anytime soon in the movies, I'm getting an idea that she works alongside Scott Lang in the next movie. That's my prediction. See, Scott watched Hank and Hope play catch up during this franchise. She practically begged him to get her own suit, but Hank's like, no, or Michael Douglas said no like 1,000 times, yelled a lot too. Scott probably saw this and knew it was gonna happen eventually with him and Cassie, right? So we had that little time jump in Endgame, now we've got an older Cassie in a world that's pretty dangerous. Maybe we'll see it, maybe we won't. Maybe it's Maybelline. And number 4, Valeria Richards. The second child, as you would have guessed, by Reed Richards and Susan Storm. She made her debut in Fantastic Four Volume 3, Issue 54. Valeria is also so badass like her brother. She may not be as powerful as her brother, with the whole Omega level pocket universe jazz, but she's super smart, smarter than her dad even. Pretty sick. She's also more into working alongside her uncle, Victor Von Doom. There's always the cool uncle everybody loves, Can't help it, just too cool. Hashtag too cool for school. She believes that Reed also never really used his knowledge to help people. Rather, he just did things for himself, which is a common theme in superhero worlds. Donning the nickname Brainstorm in the meantime, hopefully we get to see her sometime soon. Number 3, Scotty Summers. Making his debut in Mutant X issue 1 back in 1998, Scotty Summers is the son of Avengers member Havoc and Madeline Pryor. The Inferno event is probably the most noted piece of his history. See, they wanted to use Scotty Summers as a sacrifice in order to open up a portal to the Goblin Force. Madeline saved him, but in doing so, she became possessed by the Goblin Queen. This was when he showed his true power. That power just happens to be up there with Franklin Richards. Celestial level, baby. He's the best. He has soul sense empathy, so he has the ability to sense the goodness in others without even touching them. And on top of that, he can read minds, so it doesn't matter how you feel or think, Scotty already knows. And Psionic Firebird is pretty wild too. He can turn into a psychic firebird whose claws can harm you physically and or mentally. Nice. Number 2, Vision. The son of Iron Man and Banner. In Captain America Civil War, we see the fallout of Tony and Cap begin. See, after creating an evil robot son who wants nothing but destruction, Tony figures, well, maybe if I make another one, the new body and Mind Stone will kind of be good. And it did. It was pretty sweet, and he kicks ass. Vision started out as his android that belonged to Tony Stark. And then by time Infinity War, Banner says the line, "You lost another Superbot?" And then Tony responds with, "I didn't lose him, he's evolving." So this is an interesting time in the MCU. Vision is like the son of Iron Man, and then after we lost him, I knew there would be more. Even in this poster, there's a glitch, a little speck of color left in it. In Infinity Gauntlet, we see a colorless Vision after he meets a similar demise. So when that poster was released, I figured there was a part of him that was downloaded and left somewhere, because Marvel doesn't just make printing errors. I don't know why we didn't look into this more. So with WandaVision releasing on Disney Plus next year, this could become reality. Who knows where the baby Avenger will end up, but I'm excited and also very nervous. Please be okay. And finally at number 1, we got Scar. Making his debut in World War Hulk issue 5, he was conceived during the Planet Hulk storyline. He's a son of Hulk and Kyra the Old Strong. After Hulk had spent time on Sakaar, he also started spending a little bit of alone time, So after Hulk had left the planet, Sakaar had popped out of a cocoon and he resembled a teenager after just a year. So, growing pretty fast. Now, given the fact he was born to a not so chill planet, he learned to kill like it was a normal thing. Well, he needed to kill for survival. Eventually, he ends up on Axman Bone's radar. So Scar retains the old power as well. So he has the ability to control tectonic energy, like summon lava and magma, and he can also tap into energy projection. Out of the many children of the Hulk, Scar easily takes the top of that list. And also the top of this list as well, because he's here, so there it is. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Ultimate Red Skull. Making his debut in the Ultimate Comics Avengers 1 back in 2009, Ultimate Red Skull is a lot different than the Red Skull casual moviegoers would have guessed at this point. See, the son of Steve Rogers, yes, and Gail Richards. They even hid him and trained him to become the next Captain America. It's wild. The Ultimates are wild. He always feared that he would never live up to his father's expectations. I mean, Fair. At just age 17, he killed all the doctors and soldiers at the military base. He was in charge, and his side hustle was planning this badass escape in the meantime. He then got the haunting look by using a kitchen knife and carving his head. So that's disgusting. Nice gross way to kick off this list. And before we continue on to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and Hulk smash that like button because it really helps us out here at the studio. You guys are the best. Now back to the list. Coming in at number 9, we have Lyra. Taking place on Earth 8009, beginning with Hulk Raging Thunder issue 1. We find Lyra Walters, or sometimes referred to as Savage She-Hulk. She is the daughter of Thundra and Earth 616 Hulk. So yeah, she's from Earth 8009 in the 23rd century, and at that time the Earth was split into different factions, right? So the guys faction were like warriors, they looked up to like past heroes. Then the women came together under the United Sisterhood Republic, and they were outgunned and outmanned, like literally outmanned. So Thundra got sent to Earth, our Earth 616, where she met our Hulk, and had a baby. How cute. Lyra actually gets stronger when she's calm, and she's able to tap into the gamma sight, which means she can see the flow of gamma radiation. I'm doing my best interpretation of gamma radiation. Can't see the green, but it's a lot of gamma behind me. So she becomes a smarter and smoother fighter in this state. But if she becomes angry, she'll actually become weaker, which is fun. Let's play with that idea a bit. Number 8, Ultron. In the MCU, Tony and Bruce are the masterminds behind Ultron. But in the comics, it was actually Hank Pym. See, Ultron made his first debut back in 1968 in Avengers 54, and beneath the crimson cowl, we discover is indeed Ultron Pym. I love how in Age of Ultron they used a red cowl to hide his new and improved look. It was a nice reveal. In the comics, Hank Pym was actually the father of Ultron, so there's been many versions of Ultron, seeing as he constantly wants to upgrade himself and be bigger, badder, and bolder. He actually has the same brain patterns as Hank Pym. He figured it needed a personality, much like our MCU version of Ultron is basically Tony Stank, but with more, you know, metal, rage, fire, and blood, and horribleness. Number 7, Franklin Richards. Born in New York City, Franklin Richards, of course being the son of Reed Richards and Susan Storm, is quoted from Galactus himself as the most powerful mutant ever. Nice, that's it. Put that on a resume. Boop, that's sick. He is a mutant beyond Omega power. You heard it from Big Guns himself. See, Franklin was a member of Gen X, and he's also a future X-Men member in the Ultimate X-Men comics. Some of his powers include vast reality warping, psionic powers. He also has control over the universe, so awesome. He's got precognitive powers, so his dreams tip him off on what's gonna happen in real life. That happens to me, except it's always embarrassing, and they end up happening. He can see the future in his dreams. That's so OP. He can resurrect the dead, he can time travel, teleport, astral project, and he can duplicate planets and or people. So yeah, ego, living planet. You're doomed either way, pal. At a young age, he was able to create a pocket universe, and then in Fantastic Four issue 604, this dude even took on not 1, not 2, but 3 Celestials. One of them he actually just took out with 1 punch. 1 punch, man. 1 punch, man. Huh. Needless to say, Franklin Richards is not somebody you want to mess with in any of his pocket universes. Franklin has a middle name, and that's Benjamin, which is nice because they named him after their good pal, Ben Grimm, the Thing. My middle name's Douglas. Number 6, Red She-Hulk. So this mysterious character just showed up when the Red Hulk gathered a team to hunt down Domino. So while Wolverine was fighting Red Hulk, he like scratched his eyes out, which is a mess. And then just as Wolverine was about to finish him off, bam! Red She-Hulk comes in to save the day, and she's fierce. Like right off the bat, she taunts Wolverine by showing him her fancy new outfit that used to belong to Domino. Like she had Domino's gun, she had Elektra's sai, and then she bragged about how she killed the two and took their weapons and clothes. So she's kind of a hot mess. She held off the fight long enough for Red Hulk to recuperate, and then unbeknownst to Red Hulk until later on, the identity of the new mysterious Red Badass is actually none other than Betty Ross. General Ross became the Red Hulk and was an Avenger at one point, so his daughter, Betty, naturally also became the Red She-Hulk. Now, I know what I said about her earlier makes her sound like an absolute savage. In some of these comics, yeah, she is. She even killed the Hulk in Incredible Hulk 634, so you gotta check more of her out. Her powers are pretty nuts. During the scrap with Wolverine, she spat in his face, which is yucky. First of all, we don't do that anymore, 6 feet apart, people. But secondly, her saliva is acid. So she grabbed Red Hulk and they both ducked out in the sewers while his eyes melted. Yuck.
Number 5, X-Men. I mean, Of course I was going to put the X-Men on this list. Y'all know me, I'm a huge mutant fan. And the premier mutant team in the comics, of course, is the X-Men. I've also loved that over the years the X-Men has become more of a global team than just necessarily an American one. Unlike the Avengers, which has tended to remain mostly American in terms of their prominent team members throughout the years. I mean, most of the people on the Avengers tend to be American, not always, but I feel like the X-Men is a little bit more global in that regard. Although they do also have a lot of American members. I mean, based in New York. It's Marvel Comics. X-Men's current and previous lineup have also been exceptionally strong, and even the OG X-Men roster featured some mutants who are still considered the most powerful even today, and who are still around, of course, in the comics even today. The current roster features Cyclops, Firestar, Forge, Iceman, Havoc, Magic, Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl, and Synch. Honestly, Synch is also alone just so amazing, and has taken the meaning of teamwork to another level, I think. Synch. Such an underrated character that now is getting his time in the spotlight. Number 4. Eternals. The Eternals are another team that deserve more love when it comes to the comics and when it comes to their powers. They're a team made up of literal immortal beings who are extremely resistant to dying, but up until recently anyways, even if they did die, they would actually quickly return to life thanks to the machine which rebuilds and resurrects them and is integrated, or was integrated, with the planet Earth, which is actually itself a living mechanism of sorts. The Eternals recently had a killer comic series written by Kieran Gillen that I would also highly recommend you check out. This is a series that will make you a fan if you weren't already. The Eternals all also possess a unique power comparable to a powerful ability of mutant villain Apocalypse. They can manipulate and alter their own molecular structure, having complete control of it. And some, like Circe, can even manipulate matter in general, be it organic or inorganic. Number 3. God Squad. The God Squad was brought together to combat another group of gods, the Skrull Pantheon. The team made their first appearance in Incredible Hercules issue 117, but while Hercules would become their leader, they were actually brought together by Athena's command. Although she didn't serve on the team, a bunch of other super powerful individuals and gods did. With Hercules leading, their roster over time also included Thor, Circe, the Silver Surfer, Ajax, Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, Mikaboshi, Adam, Galactus, and Venus. The God Squad only made a few appearances, but I still think they're a super cool team, and I'm still disappointed we didn't get to see them in Thor Love and Thunder. I was kinda hoping. God Squad, but alas. Number 2. The Annihilators. The Annihilators are an insane cosmic team, and you know how I feel about the cosmic world of Marvel. It's probably one of the most powerful areas. The Annihilators first appeared in Thanos Imperative Devastation issue number 1, and were created by Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning, and Miguel Sepulveda, during a time when the Guardians were getting a refresh by Abnett and Lanning in the comics. The team was actually inspired by Star-Lord himself, who had an idea for a truly badass team of galactic Guardians, which Cosmo put into action. The team has featured Beta Ray Bill, Silver Surfer, Gladiator, Icon, Quasar, and Ronan the Accuser. At one point they used their powers to combine two suns together and prevented them from going supernova. So yeah, that's the power level that we're talking about. Number 1. The Defenders. I feel like the Defenders is a team that is often forgotten, but is randomly like one of the best superhero teams we've ever seen from Marvel. Perhaps this also has to do with the fact that none of its members ever really wanted to join or be there, at least not initially. The Defenders was the name given initially to the reluctant team up of the Hulk, Namor, and Doctor Strange, with Strange acting as the de facto leader of the team. Also, just having Doctor Strange as the leader of any team makes it pretty impressive, hence why the Midnight Suns are also on here. When it comes to Avengers teams, he tends to be more elusive, and even solo, he's known for being a powerhouse, so combine him with other powerhouses on a team, albeit ones, you know, in different categories like the Hulk and Namor, and you can see how this team becomes seemingly unstoppable. In fact, I feel like the fact that each of these heroes, you know, kind of has their own thing going on is what makes the Defenders so great. And they've also had a lot of other people join them throughout the years that have also been insane. As long as they all happen to be working together, the Defenders is a pretty great team, which of course, especially in the beginning, wasn't always the case. But hey, they figured it out. Number 10. Alpha Flight. This might be a controversial way to start off this list, but I truly do believe that Alpha Flight can be more powerful than the Avengers team, especially if we're talking about consistent teamwork. teamwork, which the Avengers members sometimes struggle with due to, well, butting heads with each other. I mean, people on the Avengers have straight up killed their other teammates before. That is just a fact. I mean, I did a whole list about the amount of times Iron Man has been basically killed by his teammates, and after talking it over with Andrew, it seems like Alpha Flight also has a better system in place for making sure their team not only works smoothly, but also that members are well trained before even earning their place on the team due to the existence of both Beta Flight and Gamma Flight, which were initially used as training teams. Although Gamma Flight has kind of become something else in recent years, but yes. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by giving this video a little like? Click that thumbs up. Number 9. Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns is basically Marvel's main magical team. At least currently, that's who we got. Midnight Suns typically deal with threats that are more mystical or supernatural in nature. They were brought together initially by Doctor Strange to fight against Lilith and her small army of demonic offspring known as the Lilin. Which, I mean, of course this team would be brought together by Doctor Strange, right? Each member of the original team roster had interacted with the Lilin before, which was what tied them all together. Team members and leaders have included Doctor Strange, Wong, Blade, Morbius, Magic, Nico Minoru, Wolverine, Zoe Laveau, Kushala, Dr. Voodoo, Elsa Bloodstone, multiple Ghost Riders, Hannibal King, Hellstrom, Iron Fist, Man-Thing, Jennifer Kale, Ben Reilly, Victoria Montesi, and Werewolf by Night. It's a lot of supernatural and mystical people. Number 8. Web Warriors. The Web Warriors are a fantastic multiversal team that spun out of the events of Spider-Verse. But even before they existed in the comics, they and the Spider-Verse were inspired by the team-ups of multiversal Spider-Man in the 90s Spider-Man animated series. The Web Warriors were brought together by the multiversal threat of the Inheritors, who hunted down various alternate Spider people, known as Spider Totems, across the Marvel multiverse. After they were defeated during the Spider-Verse event and the dust had settled, the Web Warriors were created to defend those worlds, who were left afterwards without a hero. Considering how powerful Peter Parker's Spider-Man is, I think you can understand how a team made up of various alternate versions of the character would be off the charts when it comes to their power level. I mean, Spider-Man himself is pretty crazy, like a team of Spider-Men. I wish we had an Avengers team that was actually just like different Spider people. That could be pretty cool. Number 7. Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four, despite being often smaller in number, though they have expanded beyond that number over the years, is still mightier, I'd say, than the Avengers. But I also feel like that's to be expected. After all, the FF were one of the first Marvel teams and are referred to fondly as Marvel's first family. So if anything, I consider them kind of like the first team. The Fantastic Four usually is made up of the 4 initial friends and relatives who are forever changed by exposure to cosmic rays during their first voyage out into space. At least that's the original origin story. The team has had countless heroes join their ranks here and there over the years. Well, you know Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and The Thing. Some other members on the FF roster have included the Hulk, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, Storm, She-Hulk, Nova, Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur, Crystal, and Black Panther, among others. Number 6. The Quiet Council. They aren't really a team of superheroes, but the title of this video is simply Marvel Teams More Powerful Than the Avengers, and the Quiet Council, I would consider them to be a team still. They're a team of folks in the Marvel universe. Granted, their team is more about protecting their power and their nation of Krakoa, but hey, I think it still counts. The Krakoan Quiet Council as such is composed of not just mutant superheroes, but mutant villains as well, as Krakoa is said to be a place for all mutants, where past misdeeds are forgiven in the name of creating a better tomorrow and a safe haven for all mutants. Current members include some of the most prominent, iconic, and powerful mutants in all of existence: Destiny, Hope Summers, Storm, Exodus, Professor X, Emma Frost, Mr. Sinister, Captain Kate Pryde, Mystique, and Sebastian Shaw. Formerly, the council also featured such additional powerhouses as Apocalypse, Magneto, and Jean Grey, besides. Number 5. Scar, son of Hulk. Dark Avengers, you know, Hulk. Scar is son of Kyra and the Hulk, growing up on Sakaar pretty much orphaned. His dad had left the planet at that point and his mom was dead. He is born on a war-torn Sakaar with a power passed on to him from his mom, referred to as the Old Power. By the time he comes to Earth, he is strong, intelligent, grown up, and seeking vengeance. He runs into his dad and at first thinks he's pretty stupid as Savage Hulk. But then he meets Bruce Banner, and they actually get along a little bit more. Eventually Scar ends up joining Osborn's new Avengers, but for his own reasons, it appears he is working as a double agent. When he finds out that the Dark Avengers are holding Captain America hostage, he shouts, "Avengers assemble!" Classic. And the old Avengers come in and take out the Dark Avengers. He later stays with the team when the Dark Avengers are passed back to the control of Luke Cage, and go back to being villains under the control of the government, like they were when they were the Thunderbolts. Basically, Marvel's version of Suicide Squad. Number 4. Daken. Daken is recruited by Osborn soon after he takes control of the Dark Avengers for the first time. Daken is lured by the promise of a job. Norman compliments Daken on beating up Wolverine, to which Daken responds, "That's between me and my father." Cut to a frame of Norman and the team looking shocked. Norman smiles and instead of offering a job, offers him something even better, the opportunity to piss off his father. That's right, Daken, also known as Dark Wolverine, is the son of Wolverine and his now dead wife, Itsu. So you guessed it, he stands in as our original Dark Avengers, Wolverine, before the resurrection of the team with Gorgon. Daken has similar abilities to his dad, claws and enhanced healing, a similar level of broodiness, but is overall depicted as more charismatic. He makes a great Dark Wolverine and a great Dark Avenger. Feel free to check out the Dark Wolverine comics for even more Daken. Number 3. Bullseye. Best marksman in the Marvel Universe. He is also insane. His father beat him up when he was a kid and he grew up working on just his shot. He's colorblind and appears back in the 60s comics as a villain to Daredevil, Spider-Man, Elektra, and Punisher. Osborn recruits him straight from the Thunderbolts and makes him his Hawkeye. Some would even say he's a better Hawkeye. He's a better marksman, and Osborn keeps him on meds to keep him a little less maniacal, though he still manages to bring a good amount of laughs in the comics. Number 2. Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn as the Iron Patriot. Following his televised defeat of the Skrull Queen, who is disguised as Spider-Woman, Norman becomes the Nick Fury of the new organization Hammer, and the Iron Man of the new Dark Avengers. When the team is originally formed, Osborn is basically handed the keys to S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ, and manages to get past Tony Stark's security measures with the assistance of Ghost, to get to all of Stark's Iron Man suits. Donning a suit himself, Osborn calls himself the Iron Patriot, and is in charge of recruiting and assembling the Dark Avengers, and managing Hammer, the new version of S.H.I.E.L.D., an acronym originally created by Osborn without any meaning whatsoever. He leaves it up to his employees to decide what the letters can stand for. Norman leads Hammer and the Dark Avengers on many adventures, from defeating Morgan Le Fay, to destroying Asgard, to creating his own team of X-Men with Emma Frost as their leader. Good choice, Norman. Number 1. The Sentry, Robert Reynolds. The strongest hero the world forgot. The Sentry's backstory is maybe the saddest and the best of all of our Dark Avengers. A hero that Earth has long forgot, he long ago had to be erased from everyone's minds in an effort to protect the world. In the 2000 Sentry comics, we discover that Sentry is a hero who actually influenced the heroes of today into becoming who they are. From Spider-Man to Hulk. Heck, Reed Richards was the best man at his wedding. He is referred to as the strongest hero on planet Earth multiple times. But if you don't believe me, just check out the epic battle between the Hulk and Sentry in World War Hulk. So how does he end up on the Dark Avengers? The Sentry is a complex character who struggles with his all too epic power and a split personality disorder. Norman Osborn offers to help him with that as someone who has wrestled his own demons. I think you can imagine how well that goes.